Hey, just this morning I was thinking about a story that happened a long time ago, and we were very newly married, and I was very sick. Some of you recall that time with what we thought was MS. And I just had always something going wrong. And this one particular time, I was back on my way to the emergency room at our local hospital, and I was always there, it seemed. I mean, it got to the point where when the triage nurse would see me, she would look up and say, "Oh, hey, Cher." And when someone would say, well, what's your telephone number? I tell them 969-8000, because that was the hospital number. And if I wasn't already there, I was probably on my way. That's how sick I was in those days. And on this one occasion, I got very ill early in the morning. And usually I would very suddenly lose some kind of motor action. And this particular time, if I'm not mistaken, I was unable to walk, just unable to get up on my own 2 feet and walk properly, even to just stand properly. It was very frightening. So my husband rushed me to the emergency room, and on our way there, he realized that he would probably not make it back to campus in time for his early class. And so he contacted the Bible department secretary and asked her to contact the students in class and let them know what happened, and that he'd be able to make up that class later on for them. Well, as a result of that, he got this very scathing email from a girl in that particular class who didn't care about ER, hospital, wife sick, nothing. It didn't matter. She was just upset that the class was canceled and she was in it and she wouldn't be able to go to class that day. Well, I got my eyes on that email and I thought, what on earth is wrong with her? And I just remember saying, B, I just need about 30 to 60 seconds in a room with this girl. That's all. And then I can get it all off my chest and I will be fine. Just 30 to 60 seconds, wrap it all up, take care of this chick. Of course, he said to me, now, that's not necessary. Hold on. Let me talk to her. She probably just doesn't understand. I'm thinking, what about hospital emergency room sick wife does she not get? She probably just doesn't understand. Let me talk to her. I'm thinking, why do I care about what she understands? She should never have written that. It's so disrespectful. Let me take care of it. And indeed he did. But you can imagine, those of you who know me well, just how difficult it was for me to just let that go. Well, as it would turn out later on, I'd have a child who's exactly the same way. So for Khaki and B both, I mean, you can literally walk on their faces, and unless you leave cleat marks there, they're both absolutely fine. Say things like, well, they didn't really understand, and let's just give them another chance. It sometimes drives me crazy. Now, when you live with two people and they're both exhibiting a trait like that and you're not, guess who God's working on? So, as God would have it, one day I'm reading in 2 Kings chapter 5, which some of you recognize as the chapter that talks about Naaman and his leprosy. And my eyes were opened wide as to the why behind caring. And this story, although it doesn't even give this little servant girl in Naaman's court a name, we just know that she is an Israelite girl who is a slave in Naaman's court, specifically serving Naaman's wife. And she recognizes one day this little girl who is, held as a slave outside of her own culture, most likely away from the rest of her family, and she is there for who knows how long. So she recognizes her master is sick, and she says something like, oh wow, if only my master were to see the prophet in Samaria, she's talking about Elisha, he would cure him from his leprosy. Little girl. And I'm thinking, reading this, why does she care? He's her master. She is his slave. Why does she care? But she does. And that is the only line that we know of that little girl has in the whole story. She says that statement to Naaman's wife, who says it to Naaman, who says it to the king of Syria, where he lives, who says it to the king of Israel, where the prophet lives, And then who says it to the prophet himself. And indeed, as you may recall, Naaman is eventually made well. And I have to tell you, just the idea that this little girl who would not care, who should not care in my mind, about what happens to someone who is treating her improperly, someone who is her master and whose slave she is, it just speaks volumes to me as to what's really going on. God calling our attention to the very same thing that Jesus Christ did. Scripture tells us God commends his love to us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. When we were not in a position where we were loving on him and talking about him and all this other stuff, while we were yet sinners, while many of us still had our fists up in God's face, Christ died for us. It didn't go the other way around. He didn't like us because we liked him. You get that? Such a big deal. And so as we look back to the fact of his dying on the cross, in order for him to die on the cross, he had to get to the cross. And in order for him to get to the cross, he had to be born. So I hope that as we celebrate the born part, the birth of Jesus Christ, this very week, that we understand that God the Father cared even while we were yet sinners. He cared about you and he cared about me, and he sent his son here to be born as a baby, to grow up and to die. Born to die. My goodness, what else do we need? So I hope you celebrate Christmas with the idea in your mind, you know, this is how I know for sure. This is how I know for certain, without a shadow of a doubt, that God cares. Because when I still did not, he sent his son to die for me. He sent his son first to be born, go to the cross, and to die for you and for me. God bless you. Merry Christmas.